First of
fine.
all, Trooper, just for the record, could you please state your name and your badge number?
Jeffrey Kreigdale, Captain, San Andreas State Patrol, badge number
All
475.
right, thank you very much. And Trooper, the statement that you're about to provide us, you're providing of your own free will without any coercion, etc.
That's correct.
All right, and you are aware that you could have an attorney present here if you wished.
That's correct.
All right. Let's begin our conversation, Trooper Kreigdale, in the matter of the state versus Jasper Elliot. Let's begin with the original incident that happened. This is going to be back on in November, and can you walk me through that incident, please?
Absolutely. So the broad overview of what happened is I was on patrol normally on that day in November, and what I received was a radio call from Air One, which was up in the air, airborne at that time, being operated by Trooper Mason, as well as his co-pilot, the name of which escapes me at the moment, who were watching a pair of individuals for suspicious activity in the Grapeseed area. And what they did was they actually observed these individuals get into a gray in color Baller SUV, and it was suspected to be a stolen vehicle. And they were observing it for traffic infractions, etc. And they called a ground unit to help pull them over with assistance, because obviously the helicopter cannot do that. So I was nearest to the area, so I responded. And what happened was I was coming westbound on Seaview Lane, where I actually passed by the baller and then turned around. Actually, excuse me, it was on Calafia Way, just west of Grapeseed, on the actual dirt road there. And I actually passed the vehicle. The vehicle was traveling eastbound. I was traveling westbound looking for it. I passed it, confirmed what it was, executed a U-turn, and then proceeded to pull the vehicle over. It was initially my desire to execute what we call a felony stop, or a high-risk stop, on the vehicle, because the plate returned confirmed stolen at the time. So that was my initial game plan. However, when I advised this over the radio, I was instructed by Trooper Mason, who was operating Air One, to go ahead and effect a normal traffic stop. So I complied with that. I effected a normal traffic stop, which involves a lower guard raised by the trooper, affecting the stop. Essentially, with a felony stop or a high-risk stop, you're getting out of your vehicle with your firearm at the ready and issuing verbal commands to the driver, whereas with a traffic stop, we're simply getting out of our vehicle with our weapon holstered and approaching the vehicle normally, as you would on any particular traffic stop for some kind of traffic infraction, to issue a traffic ticket. So I pulled the vehicle over with lights and siren to notify them I was there. And then once we were all stopped, I exited my vehicle. I approached the Baller SUV and made my presence known to the individuals inside. There were two individuals inside the Baller SUV. Both were Caucasian males, one with dark hair, one with blonde hair. And forgive me, the report describes their description in more detail. I would rather not try to guess at this time. It's been a long time, and I don't want to
I understand,
contradict
but
myself.
if you
But
saw
regardless,
the if
there
you
were
saw the
two.
individual that one of the individuals that was in the car, do you feel like you would be able to identify them in court?
I would, however, the individual with dark hair got a haircut. He did change his
I see.
hairstyle between November and the current day. With the second individual, the blonde-haired man, I could recognize his face, absolutely, but it is equally as likely that he changed his
All right.
hairstyle as well.
Okay, so you make the traffic stop and you approach the vehicle, and can you tell me at that point in time, uh, as you approach that vehicle, what did you do?
Well, so I executed all normal procedures for a traffic stop. What we were trained to do is, as we walk by the rear bumper, we reach out and touch the trunk to A, make sure it's secure and nothing might pop out while we're executing our traffic stop, and B, leave a fingerprint just in case something happens and that vehicle is recovered later. We know that a trooper, when prints are pulled from that vehicle, we know that I, in that case, or the trooper involved was there. So move forward to the driver's side window, the B pillar, and address the individuals inside the vehicle and begin essentially making contact with them about the reason for the stop, which was essentially erratic driving at the time, and try to talk to them about, okay, this is a traffic infraction, etc. However, the conversation was quickly derailed by the occupants of the vehicle. The both the driver and the occupant were very acutely aware of the presence of the helicopter unit in the air above them. They knew that it was there. They knew that it had been watching them for some time, and they became quickly accusatory and defensive toward me, asking about why the helicopter had been there, what it was doing, why it was following them, why I was there. So I was quickly put on the back foot in that conversation. And so, long story short, there were words exchanged. I was trying to de-escalate the situation. However, when it came to that, I was going to begin asking them to step out of the vehicle, according to my rights in Pennsylvania versus Mims. The next thing I know, I'm faced with the muzzles of two 6-inch barrel revolvers pointed at my face. Both individuals in the vehicle had withdrawn their sidearms uh, faster than I would have given anybody credit for, and were pointing it at me and ordering me to get inside the
Now,
vehicle.
have you seen individuals, or in your experience, Captain, had individuals that reached for a weapon when when you were performing a traffic stop like that?
I've had individuals reaching for various objects inside their vehicles, for example, registration, insurance, things like that inside the glove box. I've even had somebody whose paperwork was underneath the floorboards of the passenger side of the vehicle. Their car was a bit of a wreck. However, I've never had somebody reach for a gun while I was standing right there at the car. I have had people withdraw weapons on felony stops, on high-risk stops. However, in those cases, we have the strong advantage where we are already pointing our
Roger.
weapons at them, and it usually de-escalates in a manner where nobody's hurt.
The reason I asked the question is I I was curious as to whether you felt like they had those weapons at the ready, and it was just a matter of them raising their arm and pointing it at you, or did they actually have to withdraw them from a place that they had a holster, or by the seat or something like that?
So, given the speed at which the weapons were produced, they were definitely contained in the vehicle in a position with which they could be accessed quickly. However, while I was conducting the stop, the driver had both of his hands on the steering wheel. The passenger had his hands on his lap. But that said, it seemed to me after the fact extremely apparent that the driver must have had his sidearm in a place perhaps tucked right beside his seat, while the passenger could have had it in any number of locations where they were both able to produce the sidearms very quickly, too quickly for me to react.
And given that you said that they were acutely aware, or made you aware that they knew that Air One was watching them at the time, um, did they indicate at all that they were expecting to be stopped?
No, they did not indicate that. They gave no indication that they were expecting to be stopped. However, I would say that they certainly were not surprised that a ground unit had come to intercept them, given their awareness.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Now, as they pointed these revolvers at you, um, first of all, had you called at this point in time for any type of additional backup?
Well, so with every call for a high risk or a felony stop, the request for additional units is almost implied. However, since that had been uh, downgraded to a regular traffic stop, no, at the time there were no other ground units responding to assist.
Roger. All right. And now, now take me through. They have the two firearms pointed at you. What was said there? If you can, you remember the exchange that happened at that time?
Not word for word, but the essential gist of it was get in the car if you know what's good for you and don't say anything. So, put your hands up, get in the car, don't say anything. So that's what I did. I complied. I would not have been able to react and to defend myself in a manner that was considering that I had two guns pointed at me at the time, there was nothing I could do except to comply to hope to de-escalate the situation. So at this time, what happened was both of them were pointing their sidearms at me, telling me to get in the car. I was willing to comply simply to preserve my own life. The passenger, which I do struggle to recall which one it was at this point. I'll have to check my notes. He actually got out of the vehicle and circled around it with his weapon still at the ready to make sure that I was getting in the vehicle correctly. So I had my hands up at this point over my head, away from my radio, away from my gun, and I was complicit. So I did get in the back seat of the Baller SUV, and then after that, the individual who had gotten out of the front seats joined me in the back seat on the
Now,
other
was
side.
that the blonde-haired individual or was that the dark-haired individual?
Like I said, it is hard for me to recall right now since it's been almost a year
Yeah.
since the incident. I do believe I may have recorded it in my notes, or I'll have to check my body cam. I would not want to say for fear of contradicting myself.
Okay. And later, would you learn that that the individual, one of the two individuals, that told you to get in the car, one of those two individuals was Mr. Jasper Elliot.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I recognize Mr. Elliot from appearance, demeanor, speaking characteristics, and everything else in everything we experienced in the end of May, beginning of June, from what he was saying, from the exact same thing, speaking characteristics, behavior, demeanor, back in
All right,
November.
perfect. And we'll get to the end of May here a little later on. Let's just go ahead. So after they get you inside the car, the guy, one of the passenger, joins you in the back, and at that point in time, take me through the events as you recall them.
Okay, so this is where it begins a very long, drawn out chase, essentially, although it wasn't really, all over San Andreas. I couldn't tell you the exact route we
How you doing,
took.
Queek?
My attention was not on the surroundings so much as the two individuals holding me captive. However, we did drive all over San Andreas multiple times. The two individuals in the vehicle were trying to hold me for ransom for the amount of $50,000. What they did was they secured my hands together, to the rooftop of the vehicle, to the handle in the rear seat, from the roof of the vehicle. So that was where my
Okay.
hands were. They did put my radio in my hands because they wanted me to serve as the liaison between them and the state police. So uh, out of their it was crazy how it actually worked out, but I was able to depress the radio's button in a manner where they didn't see it, and sometimes transmit parts of the conversation over to dispatch that they weren't expecting, which worked out to our benefit. However, regardless, so we were driving all over San Andreas. They were issuing through me the demand to the police for $50,000 for my life. At the time, it was officers Bayo and Mason who were spearheading the effort to secure my safety. So they were coordinating together some attempt to either fake a $50,000 ransom, or secure a real $50,000 ransom, or the third option was obviously to try to secure me from the criminals without any action, without any negotiation action.
Okay, got it. All right. And during this time, you'd never come into contact with either of these two individuals prior.
Not to my knowledge.
Did
never
they
in my life.
mention anything about why they wanted this sum of money? Why why 50? Why not 100,000? Why not, $1 million?
No, there was no particular logic, or at least they did not explain it to me why the amount of money. Um, they also did not bother to explain, if they had any particular grudge. It seemed like your average criminals who had been caught stealing a vehicle wound up with a live police officer in the hands, and wanted to take advantage of the situation.
All right. So no prior history, nothing like an arrest that you made of this individual a long time ago, or no family relation,
No.
nothing like that in the background. Okay.
No,
All right.
absolutely not. Of Jasper Elliot, his record was clean in the state of San Andreas. The second individual, I do not know his
Okay.
name.
All right. Yeah. Later on, we have indications of them referring to either themselves or what have you as J and R, and I believe J to be
R and J, yes.
and I believe J to be Jasper Elliot alias, and R we do not know
Yep.
at this time.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I believe they were going for some kind of Romeo and Juliet moniker, possibly. And yes, R is still at large.
Roger. Okay, so how did you affect your escape from these individuals? Tell me how they
Well,
what happened there when it became apparent that well, tell me a little bit as this thing comes to its end.
Well, so details of the chase, irrelevant details of the
Right.
chase aside, essentially what happened was we wound up in
Ooh,
in
Reese's
the
Puffs.
eastern side of Los Santos, traveling southbound, and I had continued to have conversations with the two captors the entire time, and essentially the gist of the conversation was I was trying to A, de-escalate the situation, and B, try to emphasize the likelihood, or excuse me, the lack of likelihood of them getting their money, getting what they wanted, and getting away from the situation scot-free. So all I was saying the entire time was, really, it's not going to work out. Like, I will try to help them as much as possible. These are all essentially de-escalation techniques. I will try to help them as much as possible. I will communicate what they want, but and at this point, I was telling them, realistically, even if you drop me off alive and well and collect your money, they are going to track you down. You're going to go to jail for a massively long time. We're going to find you. It's not, or the key is with these kinds of situations is to not focus on the negative. So what I would be constantly pressing is, or you could just, hey, just let me go. It'll be fine. They'll not follow you. You'll be able to get away. Essentially, there'll be no hard feelings. If you let me go right now, it'll be a lot easier for both of you than if you were to keep me and try to keep the ransom negotiations going. And I don't know if I just struck a chord with them luckily, or what happened, but essentially over the course of our conversations with me and the two captors, uh, we were rolling, I believe it was southbound on El Rancho Boulevard. They pulled over to the side of the road, and the individual in the back with me cut the ropes that were tying me to the roof of the car, and they kept my radio, kept my gun, but they said, get out of the vehicle, and don't do anything until we're out of view. So I did. I got out of the vehicle. They sped off to the south, and I borrowed a passersby cell phone to contact 911 and let them know. And momentarily after that, Officer Bayo rolled up and found
All
me.
right. So no harm had come to you other than you were terrified, obviously, for your life, trying to de-escalate the situation.
That's correct.
Now, during the course of this de-escalation, was there the guy in the passenger seat? Who seemed to be? Did one of those two in their dynamic? I guess. Did one of them seem to be more in control than the other, as if he was kind of the leader or the alpha, if you will? Or did they just kind of talk about it on equal terms?
I don't know about one of them. I don't know about. I would say they were more on equal terms. I don't know about one of them being more in control than the other.
Hey, Logan. Hey, Megan.
There was definitely one was more aggressive than the other. There was definitely multiple instances where one of the partners would be calming down the other, more often than not to my benefit. One partner seemed with very less regard for life, while his other partner would be attempting to calm him down and de-escalate as well.
Okay, all right. Would you say that was the person that was in the back, or was that the driver?
I will have to check. I will have to check
Okay.
my report on that one to make sure I have it correctly.
All right. Okay. Is there anything else that you that strikes you about the November 30th incident that we haven't gone over?
The only other thing that concerns us is after the incident was complete, I was picked up by Officer Bayo, and everything was secure from the incident. Throughout the rest of the day, for the rest of my shift, every once in a while, more than every hour or so, we would get random 311 calls with vaguely veiled threats saying, oh, it was nice to meet you, Trooper Kreigdale, or the next time we'll be in the city, it'll be worse, something along those lines. But every single message was signed by R&J.
All right. So that was a way that they communicated back to you, and you knew it was them, even though it was coming through 311
Absolutely.
dispatch. Okay.
Obviously, there is no way that I can prove that those calls were from them. However, the circumstances indicate to me that it is obviously that was.
Well, or at least it was somebody acting on their behalf that communicated a
Yes.
message that they wanted communicated. Okay.
Yes.
The when you stopped at El Rancho Boulevard, um, where were there any buildings like government buildings or anything in that location? Do you know what the cross street was? Maybe.
Uh, I don't believe so. Let me check real quick if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure thing.
So I believe the answer to your question is no. I believe it was El Rancho Boulevard in the area of Sustancia and Fudge Lane, possibly slightly north, possibly slightly south of that intersection. But no, there are no prominent government buildings in that area.
Did they take you across any of the bridges around town while you were in captivity?
Yeah, the bridges in Los Santos
Yeah,
specifically.
in fact, the one I'm thinking about in particular is there's that there's a green trestle bridge, kind of an iron bridge that goes southbound towards the dockyard, like going towards the Mayweather docks. Do you know if that bridge was crossed?
Are you talking? Are you talking about the south side of La Puerta turning into Elysian Fields, or are you talking about a smaller
I
bridge?
think it's no, I believe it's that one. Let me let's see. Oh God, how do I get my map
Yeah,
to?
please.
Nope. Mm. Maybe my map on my phone will work. Let's see here. There's got to be a way to get like to the outside map here. Let's see.
Surely.
All right, all right. Well, I'll have to get back to you on that one. Let's continue.
Okay. For what it's worth, I don't recall
Caps lock.
off
Thank
the
you.
top of my head, I don't recall being on Elysian Fields Freeway over the Elysian Islands. I don't recall being that far south on the city.
Okay. All right. All right.
However, it's definitely worth saying that my attention was not
No.
outside the vehicle.
No, it was probably
90%
at the
of
guy
time.
next to you with a gun at you. That's I.
It would be worth if we can. It would be worth talking to Trooper Mason about all of it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the reason I ask is I've been driving around, and while crazily enough, there are a lot of signs posted in the city of cameras and everything else, and there are very few physical cameras that you can see. Though I believe there's probably a lot of other cameras that might be might be around, but certainly the ones that we can see, I know there's a pair of them that are watching some of those on some of the bridges, and I think most people don't even realize they're there. So I find that can be really useful to put a vehicle in a time, with a potentially a view of the driver, at least in the area of a potential crime, right? Okay, so let's fast forward on to 25 May. So 25 May begins with around 0500, and I believe there is something discovered out here on. Actually, 25 May. Forgive me. I don't think you were responding to that one. That was not an incident you were involved in. This is the Mission Row parking lot.
I was actually uninvolved. Yeah, I was actually uninvolved for the majority of excuse me, I was uninvolved with every single call involving Mr. Or who we suspect to be Mr. Elliot for the entire month of May, as well as June. I was not there to react or to respond to any calls involving the perceived threats from him. The last incidents I have of actually interacting with him were in Bolingbroke Penitentiary.
Okay. All right. So then, all right. Well, then I think that's pretty much it. I mean, it's your name continues to surface throughout all of those reports as they continue to demand these
Yep.
$50,000,
Oh yeah.
ransom, and of course we have bodies start to
Yep, exactly.
appear throughout the city, but that's a little further
Absolutely.
on. Okay,
Yep.
all right then, and
Yeah.
you received no communication directly from these individuals, or from around this case.
Yeah, to my knowledge, exactly. To my knowledge, no. The only ever attempts at
Gotcha,
communicating
Logan.
with me
Thank you.
were through 311 or through these morbid notes.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I think that covers it. The evidence, just so you know, on the timeline that I'm aware of right now, my investigation report is going to go up